The courtroom was quiet. The murmurs of a few spectators barely reached the walls, and the air smelled faintly of polished wood and ink from the legal documents scattered across the judge's bench. Chuck Norris sat in his chair, calm as ever, his eyes scanning the room with that quiet intensity only he could carry. Today was supposed to be just another routine hearing, nothing dramatic, nothing extraordinary. But nothing about this day would remain ordinary. A police officer, tall, muscular, and clearly frustrated from a long day on duty, entered the courtroom. He didn't notice Chuck at first, or perhaps he thought he was just another attendee. But something in Chuck's calm, unassuming presence seemed to trigger an irrational sense of arrogance in the officer. Without warning, the cop slapped Chuck across the face. The sound echoed sharply through the courtroom. Papers fluttered from the desks. Gasps erupted from spectators. Chuck's head jerked slightly from the force, but his eyes never wavered. He didn't yell. He didn't attack immediately. For a fraction of a second, the entire room froze. The judge's gavel hovered in the air mid-slam. The courtroom's tension became almost unbearable, a living thing that pressed against every chest. People pulled out their phones, whispering, "Did he just—" Chuck's expression remained calm, controlled, almost eerily so. He touched his jaw lightly and slowly rose from his chair, every movement deliberate, measured, and confident. The cop, misinterpreting Chuck's silence, smirked, thinking he had intimidated him. But everyone watching felt the shift. Something had changed in the room. The energy had flipped. It wasn't just a slap anymore. It was a challenge, and Chuck Norris, by virtue of simply being Chuck Norris, had already started taking control of the situation. The spectators leaned forward. The whispers grew louder. Who does he think he is? Chuck Norris? No way. Yet the cop remained blind to the storm he had just provoked. What Chuck did next left everyone in the courtroom frozen, and you won't believe it until you see it unfold. The courtroom had turned electric. Spectators whispered among themselves, their phones now raised to record every second. The sound of Chuck's jaw lightly touching his hand after the slap seemed almost deafening compared to the silence that followed. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The hot-headed cop, chest heaving, looked around smugly, believing he had won some invisible contest. He didn't realize that the man in front of him wasn't just any man. He was Chuck Norris, a living legend, a force of calm power that few could ever comprehend. Chuck remained seated for a moment, his breathing slow, his eyes narrowing ever so slightly. That small gesture sent a ripple of tension across the room. People instinctively leaned forward in their seats. You could almost hear the collective heartbeat of the courtroom sync with Chuck's measured pulse. It was a moment of pure suspense, the kind that freezes you in place, leaving you on edge. The cop's smirk didn't falter, yet. "What's the matter?" he barked, trying to mask his growing unease. "Too quiet for you, huh? Didn't expect anyone to stand up to me in here." Chuck finally spoke, his voice calm, deliberate, and almost chilling in its restraint. "You just slapped a man for no reason. You should have thought twice before doing that." The words were simple, but their weight hit the room like a sledgehammer. The spectators' jaws dropped. Whispers started spreading. Did he just talk to him like that? He's so calm like nothing can touch him. The cop clenched his fists, his face red with anger. He took a step closer, thinking intimidation would finally work. But Chuck didn't flinch. Instead, he stood slowly, deliberately. Every movement was controlled, precise, almost hypnotic in the way it demanded attention. The courtroom collectively held its breath. Some spectators even felt a chill. It was as if Chuck's presence alone had trapped the cop mentally and emotionally. Phones recorded every second, the whispers growing louder. "Is that Chuck Norris?" "No way, it's him." The cop still didn't seem to realize who he was confronting. He sneered and barked, "Stand still. You think you can talk back to me in my courtroom?" Chuck's eyes didn't leave the cop. He tilted his head slightly, as if analyzing every intention, every micro-expression. He didn't need to raise his voice. His calmness was already dominating the room, mentally trapping the cop into a cage of his own frustration. Every muscle in the officer's body tensed. The air between them was electric. Then Chuck's gaze swept over the crowd. His calm, piercing stare was an unspoken message. Everyone here is watching. One wrong move, and the truth will come out. The cop's confidence began to waver. The spectators sensed it. Some whispered to each other, others posted live videos to social media. Within seconds, hundreds of notifications pinged around the city and beyond. If you were watching this unfold live, where would you be? Comment your city or country below. Meanwhile, the cop, desperate to regain control, shouted, "Sit down, or you'll regret this." Chuck didn't sit. He remained calm, poised, his presence alone speaking louder than any words. The crowd could feel the tension rising. Some leaned forward instinctively, waiting for the inevitable, hearts racing. Others tried to suppress smiles at the thought of the cop finally meeting someone who wouldn't be intimidated. The officer's attempts at provocation grew sharper. He moved closer, invading Chuck's space, trying to force a reaction. But Chuck didn't react with anger. He just stood tall, shoulders squared, breathing measured. Every second he didn't retaliate, the cop's frustration increased, and the audience felt it too. It was a masterclass in mental dominance. Whispers spread across the courtroom. He's not even moving, just staring him down. The cop doesn't know what he's in for. Phones were raised higher. People were live streaming now. Friends, family, and strangers sharing the moment as it unfolded. The tension was palpable, and the world outside the courtroom was beginning to watch through tiny screens. Chuck finally spoke again, still calm. You cannot intimidate people with fear, and you should never disrespect anyone, especially in a place of law and justice. The cop's face twisted with anger and disbelief. How could this man remain so calm, so unshakable? The courtroom was now fully under Chuck's control, mentally, emotionally, and morally. Every spectator, from the front row to the back, could feel the cop's confidence unraveling. At this point, some spectators even started joking quietly, "He's going to teach him a lesson," but silently. Everyone knew the real storm hadn't started yet, but they were trapped emotionally, unable to look away. What happens next will push the cop to the edge, and you won't believe how Chuck handles the rising tension. The courtroom had become a battlefield of wills, though no fists had been thrown yet. Every eye in the room was fixed on Chuck Norris, and the cop would dare to slap him. The officer, now visibly rattled, tried to regain control. His chest heaved with anger, and his face turned redder with every passing second. Yet the calm, composed figure of Chuck stood like an unshakable mountain, completely unaffected. Chuck's eyes locked onto the officer, not with fear, not with anger, but with a measured intensity that made the cop feel exposed, almost as if his very thoughts were being read. The room seemed to shrink. The spectators leaned forward, breathless. Phones raised in the air captured every flicker of emotion. Some whispered to one another, while others dared not speak, fearing they might break the spell of the moment. The cop barked, "I've never been treated like this. Sit down before He stopped mid-sentence, unsure what threat would actually work. His authority, so absolute just moments ago, felt fragile under Chuck's unflinching gaze. Chuck didn't even raise his voice. He just remained calm, silent, making the cop's aggression seem smaller, almost ridiculous in contrast. The emotional tension was suffocating. The cop's hand twitched as if he wanted to strike again, but he couldn't. Chuck's calm dominance had trapped him mentally. Every second he hesitated, the spectators felt the power shift. You could almost hear the collective heartbeat of the room accelerate as the cop struggled to maintain composure while realizing he had pushed too far. Chuck's calmness was a weapon itself. He slowly lifted his hand, not to strike, but to gesture subtly, almost as if reminding the officer and the crowd that real power was restraint. The cop's eyes flicked nervously to the spectators. Whispers spread. He's not reacting, he's just standing there. Does he even know who he's messing with? The crowd began to sense the tension, the stakes, the inevitability of what was coming. That if you were in this courtroom right now, what would you do? Would you stay calm like Chuck? Or would you react? Type your answer in the comments below. The cop tried another tactic. He stepped closer, towering over Chuck, chest puffed out, like a predator asserting dominance. "You think you're special? You're in my courtroom." But Chuck didn't flinch, didn't raise his voice, didn't even blink aggressively. He simply stood there, eyes focused, breathing steady. That calmness alone mentally trapped the cop, making him question every move, every word. The spectators were leaning forward now, some gripping the edges of their seats. Phones were everywhere, recording every tense heartbeat. A few people whispered to each other, "He's going to explode any second or not." I don't know which would be worse. The courtroom felt like a live wire, charged with anticipation. Chuck's wife, or a close companion if you want, sensed the tension and whispered from the gallery, "Honey, maybe just let it go." But Chuck shook his head slightly, not in aggression, but in determination. This wasn't about winning or losing. It was about exposing arrogance and teaching respect, letting the cop feel the consequences of his rash actions without unnecessary violence. Every movement Chuck made was deliberate. He adjusted his stance slightly, a subtle display of confidence. Every micro-expression of the cop revealed growing doubt and fear. Chuck had created a psychological trap. The cop wanted to regain control, but couldn't. The more he tried to force dominance, the more obvious it became to the crowd and the viewers at home that he was losing. Whispers grew louder. "He's not even angry. The cop looks completely defeated already." Chuck's calm stare made it clear. Any move now would be his choice, and it would end decisively. The judge, sensing the tension, slammed the gavel lightly. "Order!" But even the judge's voice seemed small against the silent storm of anticipation building between Chuck and the cop. Every spectator knew something monumental was about to happen. The tension was almost unbearable. Next, a subtle shift will happen. A single whisper, a glance, that will signal that everyone in the courtroom is about to witness something unforgettable. The courtroom had become almost surreal. Every eye was glued to Chuck Norris and the cop who had dared to challenge him. The tension was thick, like static electricity waiting to spark. No one moved. No one breathed loudly. The cop, already shaken from the previous exchanges, still believed he could assert control. He didn't realize just how deep the trap he was in had become. Chuck remained silent, his eyes scanning the room with the calm precision of a predator who didn't need to strike to dominate. Every muscle, every inch of posture radiated control. The cop's smirk faltered. His hands twitched nervously. He took a step forward, trying to regain composure, but the room itself seemed to lean in with Chuck, making every action the cop took feel wrong. And then it began. The whispers. From the back of the courtroom, a young clerk murmured under her breath, Is that really Chuck Norris?" Her voice barely rose above a whisper, but it was enough. Like dominoes, the whispers spread. "No way. The man in front of us is Chuck Norris. That's him. The legendary Chuck Norris." "Wait!" The cop slapped him. The cop froze. His eyes darted around the room, searching for confirmation, for some way to dismiss the murmurs as nonsense. But the audience's reactions betrayed the truth. Phones rose, capturing footage, streaming live. Spectators' jaws dropped. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others whispered urgently to neighbors, "Do you know who he is?" Chuck remained calm. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't gloat. He simply stood there, letting the truth speak for itself. The courtroom watched in a mixture of awe and disbelief. The cop, however, had yet to fully grasp the gravity of what he had done. He still saw Chuck as just a man, unaware of the legacy, the skill, and the presence standing silently before him. Every subtle movement Chuck made, the way he adjusted his stance, the measured tilt of his head, the calm focus in his eyes, reinforced the fact that this was no ordinary man. Even without striking, he dominated the courtroom. The cop's earlier confidence, the aggression he wielded so carelessly, now seemed fragile, almost laughable. The whispers grew louder. A few spectators in the front row, recognizing Chuck instantly, whispered to each other, "He's the world-famous martial artist. You don't mess with him ever." The murmurs weren't just gossip. They were a psychological weapon, reinforcing Chuck's dominance and further destabilizing the cop's fragile control. Can you feel the tension building? What would you do if you realized the person you disrespected was a living legend? Comment below. The cop tried to regain authority, raising his voice, attempting to shout over the whispers. Sit down. You people don't know what's going on. But the courtroom no longer obeyed him. Eyes turned toward Chuck, phones raised, whispers swelling into a murmuring wave of recognition. Even the judge leaned forward, curiosity and awe replacing the usual strict courtroom authority. Chuck's composure was mesmerizing. He didn't need to threaten or yell. The recognition alone shifted the entire energy of the room. The cop's attempts at intimidation fell flat. Every attempt he made to dominate or provoke Chuck now only highlighted his own vulnerability. The audience felt it. They were mentally trapped, unable to look away, knowing that the next moments would be unforgettable. Chuck's presence had created a subtle, almost invisible psychological barrier. Every spectator felt it. Even those watching the live stream at home could sense it through the cameras. The cop's face betrayed confusion, fear, and frustration. Chuck's calm, collected stance contrasted with the cop's aggression like night and day, mentally and emotionally trapping him in front of dozens of witnesses. Then, a key moment arrived. A clerk at the back whispered just loud enough. The world champion, he's the one who just got slapped. The room froze again. Now it wasn't just spectators whispering. It was official acknowledgement. The tension became electric. Every movement, every breath, every blink from Chuck Norris seemed charged with anticipation. The cop realized, finally, that he had underestimated the legend before him. The cop thought he could provoke Chuck, but within seconds, he would learn a lesson he would never forget. The next move will leave the entire courtroom stunned. The courtroom was a pressure cooker. Every eye was glued to Chuck Norris and the cop who had dared to slap him. Every breath felt heavy, every whisper magnified. The cop, now fully aware that he had provoked a legend, struggled to regain composure. His smirk had vanished, replaced by tension and frustration. Every flicker of Chuck's calm gaze made him doubt himself more. Chuck didn't move aggressively. He didn't shout. He simply stood there, calm and poised, letting the cop squirm under the weight of his silent authority. The crowd leaned forward, phones raised, recording the moment that would soon go viral. The air was thick with suspense, charged with anticipation, every spectator aware that history was about to be made. The cop, desperate to assert control, barked. I warned you. Sit down now before. He stopped abruptly. Every word he had thought would intimidate Chuck now sounded hollow, empty. Chuck's calmness wasn't weakness. It was power-controlled, deliberate, and unshakable. The cop had just realized the true magnitude of his mistake. Chuck finally spoke, his voice calm but commanding. Violence without reason is never respect. You cannot demand respect by fear or force. You cannot intimidate anyone without consequence. The words hit like a thunderclap. The courtroom went silent. Even the judge leaned forward, stunned. Spectators whispered in disbelief. He's not just going to retaliate. He's teaching him a lesson. Every word, it's like a punch. The cop's hands clenched into fists. His chest rose and fell rapidly. He wanted to strike again, but he couldn't. He was trapped, mentally and emotionally, by Chuck's calm dominance. The crowd felt it too. They were holding their breath, hearts racing, fully caught in the tension between aggression and restraint. And then it happened. Chuck stepped forward, not aggressively, but deliberately. Every motion was precise, controlled. His eyes never left the cops, sending a message far more powerful than any shout or threat. You should have thought twice. With one lightning-fast, controlled move, Chuck delivered a precise strike that neutralized the cop instantly. It wasn't chaotic. It wasn't over the top. It was perfect, surgical, demonstrating skill, control, and authority. The officer's balance faltered. He stumbled backward, stunned, humiliated, and entirely aware that he had just been outmatched. The courtroom gasped. Phones recorded every second. The judge slammed the gavel harder than before, finally breaking the silence. Order. Order in the court. But even the gavel sounded small against the force of Chuck's presence. The spectators erupted, whispers and cheers blending into a symphony of awe. What made this moment extraordinary wasn't just the strike. It was Chuck's restraint before and after it. He didn't shout, he didn't gloat. He simply stood tall, letting the cop feel the full weight of his arrogance without unnecessary humiliation. The audience, mentally and emotionally trapped by the drama, felt every second of it. The cop, now dazed, glanced around at the room. Every witness, every phone, every spectator reinforced his embarrassment. He had underestimated Chuck Norris, and the cost was obvious. Chuck's calm, decisive response had turned the tables completely, demonstrating that true power comes not from anger, but from skill, control, and integrity. If you were in this courtroom, how would you react after seeing Chuck handle the situation? Comment below what you would do. Chuck glanced around the courtroom one last time, his gaze firm but not cruel. He spoke quietly, deliberately. Respect is earned through actions, not fear. Remember that. His words carried more weight than any punch could. The spectators, emotionally invested and mentally mesmerized, knew they had just witnessed something extraordinary, a lesson in humility, power, and justice. Every camera in the courtroom captured the moment. Phones streamed live. Social media was about to explode. The world was watching a masterclass in control and consequence, all unfolding in real time, emotionally trapping the audience in a mix of awe, admiration, and suspense. Now, everyone in the courtroom, and soon the world, will see the full aftermath. The cop's humiliation and Chuck's dignity are about to go viral, and the lessons from this moment will shock millions. The courtroom erupted. Whispers turned into gasps, and gasps into murmurs of awe. Phones were everywhere, recording the moment as if everyone knew they had just witnessed something historic. The cop, stunned and humiliated, tried to regain his composure, but every blink, every twitch betrayed his inner turmoil. He had walked into the courtroom confident, arrogant, and certain of his authority. Now, he was visibly broken, mentally trapped by the calm yet decisive power of Chuck Norris. Spectators leaned forward, mouths agape. Some whispered, "I can't believe what just happened. He's Chuck Norris?" Others laughed nervously, the tension releasing in tiny bursts as the reality sank in. People were emotionally and mentally hooked. Every heart in the room was racing. They weren't just watching a fight. They were watching a lesson in restraint, skill, and respect unfold in real time. Chuck, standing tall and calm, didn't move aggressively. He didn't mock the cop. He simply took a measured step back, letting the humiliation and realization sink in naturally. His eyes scanned the room, acknowledging the spectators without a hint of arrogance. The silence that followed his strike was more powerful than any scream. The room felt almost reverent. Chuck's presence alone had shifted the energy. The cop's arrogance had crumbled, leaving him exposed before witnesses, cameras, and the judge. The judge, finally recovering from the shock, slammed the gavel. "Order. This behavior is unacceptable," he said firmly, addressing the cop. "You have violated courtroom protocol and shown reckless aggression. This will be addressed officially." The cop swallowed hard. Sweat glistened on his forehead. Every whisper in the room, every recording being streamed live, reminded him of his mistake. His attempt at dominance had backfired spectacularly. For a moment, he was trapped not just by Chuck, but by the collective awareness of everyone in that courtroom. The emotional weight of his actions pressed on him, amplified by every phone lens pointed at him. The spectators couldn't contain themselves. Some clapped quietly, others let out audible cheers. The air was alive with energy, the kind that comes from witnessing justice, skill, and integrity play out in a single moment. Chuck, noticing the reactions, raised a hand slightly, not in victory, but in acknowledgement. He didn't gloat. His calmness and humility contrasted perfectly with the cop's embarrassment, reinforcing the lesson. True power is measured by restraint, not aggression. Even the other officers in the courtroom were taken aback. They whispered to one another, "We've never seen anything like this. He didn't even fight." And yet the cop is completely humbled. The spectators mentally tracked every subtle gesture, the tilt of Chuck's head, the controlled breathing, the firm but calm tone of his words. Every second reinforced his dominance without needing to escalate further. If someone disrespected you like the cop disrespected Chuck, how would you react? Type your answer in the comments. The cop, now fully aware of his mistake, avoided eye contact with Chuck. The humiliation was complete, mentally amplified by the fact that cameras had captured every second. He realized he had underestimated Chuck Norris, someone whose calm presence and controlled action could neutralize arrogance without a single unnecessary strike. Chuck finally addressed the room, his voice calm and commanding. Respect is not demanded. It is earned. Force without reason is meaningless. Treat everyone with dignity, regardless of who they are or what position they hold. The spectators were silenced by the words. Phones continued recording. Every word, every pause, every controlled breath from Chuck created a psychological echo, reminding the cop, and everyone watching, that real strength comes with humility. By now, the story had spread outside the courtroom. Phones were streaming live on social media, and viewers across the city, the country, and even internationally were witnessing the moment in real time. The cop's embarrassment became a global lesson in arrogance versus skill. Every online comment mirrored the reactions in the courtroom. Awe, admiration, shock, and respect. Chuck didn't need to speak any further. The aftermath had already done the work. The cop was humbled. The audience was inspired. And the lesson, that true strength comes from calm, controlled action and respect for others, was permanently etched in everyone's minds. The video has gone viral. The cop faces consequences, and Chuck's calm yet decisive action is inspiring millions. What happens online next will shock the world. The courtroom had emptied, but the energy lingered like a living thing. Every person present felt the weight of what they had witnessed. Phones were still recording. Cameras captured every angle, and within minutes, snippets of the incident began appearing on social media. The world, far beyond the walls of that courtroom, was about to see the calm, decisive power of Chuck Norris in action. By the time news outlets picked up the story, the clip had already gone viral. Millions of viewers around the globe were watching in awe as the hot-headed cop had been humbled by a single, controlled strike. The hashtag #RespectChuckNorris started trending on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Comments poured in from every country. Unbelievable. The cop deserved that. Chuck's calm is insane. What made the story resonate so widely wasn't just the strike. It was the lesson behind it. Chuck hadn't attacked recklessly or out of anger. He had acted with precision, control, and restraint, teaching a universal message. True strength is measured by calmness, integrity, and respect for others. This moral struck a chord with viewers from Los Angeles to London, Manila to New York. The cop, now facing official reprimands, was widely discussed online. Commentators analyzed his arrogance, highlighting how easily hubris and aggression could crumble in the face of calm power. The incident became a case study in respect, composure, and consequences. Videos comparing Chuck's calm before and after the strike circulated widely, showing how emotional intelligence can dominate brute force. Meanwhile, the spectators in the courtroom who had captured live footage became overnight sensations. Clips were shared, reshared, and edited into compilations that spread like wildfire. Fans commented, "I could feel the tension through the screen. I was literally holding my breath. You can feel the mental domination. This is insane." Chuck himself remained humble. He didn't post exaggerated statements or boast about what happened. Instead, he used the opportunity to highlight the importance of respect. No one should be judged by appearance or authority. Respect is earned, and restraint shows true strength. Violence without reason is meaningless. These words, short and simple, resonated far more than any strike could. They reminded millions that power isn't about aggression, but about self-control, awareness, and dignity. His message became the viral focal point alongside the footage, sparking discussions worldwide about morality, integrity, and leadership. Do you agree that true strength comes from calmness and respect? Type respect in the comments and tell us why. Even the cops' colleagues and fellow officers began discussing the incident seriously. It became a learning moment for law enforcement professionals and civilians alike. Arrogance and aggression can backfire instantly, but patience, control, and skill command respect naturally. News channels, blogs, and online communities analyzed every frame of the clip. The story reached millions of households, inspiring memes, reaction videos, and motivational posts. The global audience was emotionally hooked, replaying the incident, sharing their reactions, and debating the moral lessons it imparted. Ultimately, Chuck's calm and precise action created a ripple effect that went far beyond the courtroom. The cop faced consequences, yes, but the greater victory was the lesson delivered to millions. Respect, humility, and integrity outshine aggression and arrogance every single time. The courtroom incident, once local and contained, had become a global phenomenon, a story remembered not just for the strike, but for the emotional and moral intelligence behind it. It left viewers mentally and emotionally charged, reflecting on their own actions and how they treat others. If you believe no one should be judged by appearance or arrogance, type respect in the comments, share this story, and subscribe for more inspiring real-life moments. The story of Chuck Norris and the cop had ended, but its impact was only beginning. Millions would talk about it, analyze it, and learn from it. It wasn't just about a strike. It was about human dignity, control, and respect, lessons that the world desperately needed.